In a forgotten small town, tucked deep between the hills and winding rivers of Appalachia, lived a young woman named Mary Kate Sullivan. She was only 21, but the weight of her existence felt far older, etching a quiet sorrow deep within her spirit. Her beauty was undeniable, auburn hair that seemed to catch fire in the late afternoon sun, and deep green eyes that held a heavy, unsettling blend of sadness and unyielding, quiet strength. Her entire life had been defined by a relentless, crushing service. Her mother had passed away years ago, a loss that was followed by an even colder existence under the cruel guardianship of her stepfather, Frank Morrison, and his harsh, resentful wife, Donna. Alongside their two daughters, Becky and Carol, Frank and Donna ensured Mary Kate knew her place. She was nothing more than a constant burden, a source of free labor they took grim delight in punishing. Every morning, the routine was a brutal, monotonous echo. Before the first cockcrow, before the light dared to touch the shadowed hills, Mary Kate was already outside, fetching icy water from the well, scrubbing the wooden floors until they gleamed unnaturally, and preparing the morning meal. "Mary Kate, get your useless self down here and scrub this floor. It won't clean itself, and don't you dare stop to rest your pretty little face." Frank's voice, rough as old sandpaper and demanding, was the incessant, grating background music of her young life. Donna's cruelty, however, was more insidious, a slow poison. She used words like expertly sharpened daggers. "Mary Kate, you think because you got your mother's looks, you can sit around here like a princess? Move, you lazy girl. You are nothing but a beggar under a roof, and don't you forget it." Mary Kate had learned the hardest, most necessary lesson for survival. Silence was the safest refuge. Before we continue this incredible story of injustice and destiny, tell us in the comments, where are you listening to us from? Also, help the channel grow. Subscribe so we can continue to bring you more powerful stories like Mary Kate's. Let's get back to the story. If she dared to speak back, the immediate punishment was sleeping in the cold, dusty, windowless shed behind the barn. If she made the mistake of showing tears, they would instantly accuse her of cheap manipulation and pretending. Yet, despite this relentless tide of abuse, Mary Kate's innate kindness was stubbornly persistent. She greeted the village elders with deep, respectful nods. She helped market women carry their heaviest loads without ever asking for a dime, and she never once joined in the cruel, local gossip that ran rampant through the village. It was this quiet integrity, this dignity that shone through the grime and the rags she wore, that started to attract dangerous attention. Wealthy men, sharp-suited lawyers from Charleston, successful real estate developers driving expensive, silent cars, would often stop at the local diner. They would see Mary Kate pouring coffee with her gentle smile, and their entire original purpose for visiting the village would crumble and change. They would seek out Frank, asking about the girl with the calm, strong eyes. Frank and Donna's initial bursts of joy, believing these men were for their own daughters, would curdle into bitter, furious rage the moment the wealthy man pointed, not to Becky or Carol, but to Mary Kate. They quickly manufactured excuses to send the suitors away. Donna's deep-seated resentment began to boil over, seeing Mary Kate's simple beauty as a direct, infuriating obstacle to her own daughter's future. "You are the one blocking your sister's chance at a decent life," Donna shrieked one evening, savagely throwing Mary Kate's thin blankets and pillows out the back door. "Every rich man comes here and changes his mind. What kind of witchcraft have you put on yourself? Why do you have to be so cursed and beautiful?" Mary Kate retreated to a dark corner, tears scalding her throat but refusing to fall. "I don't even speak to them," she pleaded, the words barely a desperate whisper. Frank stepped in, his face tight with a poisonous mix of avarice and rage over the lost potential wealth. "Shut up. Don't stand there looking like a carved saint. Since you have refused to respect yourself or your family, I will make sure you never smell marriage. You will marry the first man desperate enough to take you, and he will be so poor, so broken, you will never see a decent life again." Mary Kate slowly raised her head, pure, unfiltered hurt flashing in her eyes. Frank saw the unconscious challenge in her gaze, and he delivered a harsh, shocking slap that echoed through the quiet house. "Don't look at me like that again. You think you're something because of small beauty? I will show you that I am your father." From that night, the abuse became a relentless campaign. Donna no longer allowed her to eat with the family. She locked the indoor bathroom door, forcing Mary Kate to bathe in the freezing backyard hose. The twins mocked her constantly. They would throw spoiled, rotten food onto the floor she had just scrubbed clean, laughing hysterically at her silent despair. Mary Kate said nothing, but deep inside, a quiet, growing terror began to consume her. She knew her life sentence was imminent. One fateful Saturday afternoon, the man arrived. He was tall, but he moved with a noticeable, painful limp, using a thick, roughly cut wooden stick for support. His clothes were conspicuously dirty, covered in fine sawdust and soil, and his cap was pulled low, shadowing the majority of his face. He looked utterly tired, perhaps chronically injured, and certainly destitute. The entire neighborhood watched in fascinated silence as he slowly dragged his foot across the dust and entered the Morrison compound. Frank rushed out. The man spoke in a low whisper to Frank, and Frank's eyes instantly lit up the horrifying, greedy light of a man who had found a terrible, unexpected treasure. "You're serious? You want to marry her?" Frank asked, barely containing the triumph in his voice. "I need a wife," the man replied softly, his voice rough, yet carrying a strangely calm and utterly unwavering confidence. "I can provide for her. I have enough for someone who is humble." They shook hands, sealing the terrible deal with the cold finality of a business contract. That night, Frank called Mary Kate into the living room. "Sit down," he announced, his voice devoid of emotion. "We have found a husband for you." Mary Kate turned slowly, already knowing the answer. "Who is he?" "You don't need to ask questions. His name is Samuel. He is a carpenter. He is willing to take you as you are. No dowry, nothing. Just carry your cursed beauty and go." The twins snorted with cruel, shared laughter. "Let her ask now. Maybe she wants a millionaire instead." "Shut up, all of you," Donna snapped. "We are doing her a favor. The wedding is in 2 weeks. Be grateful someone wants you." Mary Kate stared straight ahead in complete silence. 2 weeks? Married to a crippled, poor stranger? She lay on her thin mattress that night, staring blankly at the ceiling. The fear was a cold, living thing in her chest. Was this truly her life, to be married off like a piece of worthless refuse? Yet, beneath the terror, a strange, persistent curiosity about the man named Samuel began, slowly, to surface. The next day, Mary Kate saw him again. Samuel. He was sitting near the village square, far removed from the constant, buzzing village gossip, quietly feeding peanuts to a flock of pigeons. His clothing was still covered in the same fine sawdust and looked visibly worn, yet she noticed a crucial new detail: his hands. They were large, calloused, and clearly hardened by manual labor, but they were strikingly clean, his nails neatly trimmed. His posture, even when sitting hunched over the low stone wall, held a certain, undeniable dignity that sharply contradicted his destitute appearance. She took a deep breath, fighting against the crushing shame of her current circumstance, and slowly approached him. "Good afternoon, sir," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. He turned. His eyes, the deep, surprising blue she had briefly noticed before, met hers directly, holding no pity, no judgment, and no shame. "Mary Kate," he said gently. "How are you? You know my name." "I listened carefully when your stepfather shouted it yesterday," he replied, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. "You are the man I am to marry." "Yes." She looked down at her hands, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Why me? Why choose me?" "Because you're different." She blinked, utterly confused. "Different how?" He only offered that faint, knowing smile, a slow and deliberate expression that only deepened her growing confusion. Then he stood up. As he shifted his weight to brace the thick wooden cane, his spine seemed to momentarily straighten perfectly. For one brief, breathtaking moment, not a second longer, the limp vanished. He stood with the confident, balanced posture of a man who is not injured at all. Then, just as quickly, the hesitation returned, and he resumed the slow, deliberate, painful dragging of his leg. "See you soon, Mary Kate," he said, walking away slowly and deliberately. Mary Kate stood motionless for a long time. A chill, cold as the well water she fetched every morning, ran through her despite the warm afternoon sun. The man who was soon to be her husband was clearly choosing to limp. The truth, if she could even call it that, was elusive, ambiguous, and profoundly unsettling. That night, her cousins mocked her with renewed, cruel vigor, gleefully imagining her life with the crippled pauper. "I heard you were talking to your beggar husband, Mary Kate," Becky sneered. "Did he ask for a handout? You better get used to using leaves, Mary Kate." "He can't even afford toilet paper," Carol added, laughing hysterically. Mary Kate remained silent. The shame still stung fiercely, but a deeper, more overwhelming emotion was beginning to stir inside her, consuming curiosity, mixed with a strange, fragile sense of peace. She knew her life was changing drastically, but she believed, somehow, that it would not end the way her family predicted. The days crawled by, heavy with abuse. Aunt Donna doubled her efforts to break Mary Kate's spirit, giving her the most difficult, raw-hand chores and even slapping her once for walking with too much princess pride. The neighbors continued to point and whisper about the girl who thought her beauty would bring her riches, only to be married off to the village beggar. One night, 2 days before the wedding, Mary Kate found herself sitting alone outside, staring up at the half-moon. Suddenly, a shadow fell beside her. "You're not sleeping," Samuel's voice said gently. She stood up immediately, startled and shocked. "Why? Why are you here? If my stepfather sees you—" "I know," he interrupted her softly. "I will leave soon. I just wanted to talk about the wedding." He took a step closer, but maintained a careful, respectful distance. "I know this is not what you wanted," he continued, his voice low and measured. "I know you are not happy. But I want you to know this. I will not force you into anything. You will have your own room. You will have your own space. If you decide you want to leave after the wedding, I will let you go. You will be free." Mary Kate slowly raised her head, her eyes wide with total astonishment. This was the first time in years that anyone had offered her any semblance of freedom or choice. "Why would you say that? Why me?" "Because I am not here to punish you," he said, his voice suddenly hard with conviction. "I just wanted someone who could see me. Someone who would treat me like a human being, not an object of pity or a burden. I saw you at the diner. You offered me water. You greeted me with respect. That is rarer than people realize. But I didn't ask for this," she whispered, the tears burning in her throat. "I didn't ask to be married off like trash." "I know," he whispered back. "And I am sorry." They stood in silence. His promise, "You will be free," eased her terror, replacing it with a desperate, all-consuming need to understand the man who stood before her. "Good night, Mary Kate." He turned and walked away, his practiced limp dragging him slowly into the deep darkness. Mary Kate remained, watching the spot where he vanished. The terrifying, fragile feeling of safety she felt with this strange, possibly deceptive man was the first true peace she had known in years. The final days leading up to the wedding stretched Mary Kate's spirit taut, threatening to snap. Aunt Donna and her daughters intensified their campaign, ensuring every hour was a fresh lesson in humiliation. Mary Kate was assigned the brutal chore of hand-washing the entire family's laundry in the freezing creek water, leaving her hands raw and bleeding by nightfall. The twins, meanwhile, openly prepared their own elaborate, imagined wedding outfits, parading their fantasy in front of her. "Look at me, Mary Kate," Becky sneered one afternoon, turning slowly in a cheap lace dress. "When I marry a man who owns a house, this is what I will wear. You'll be lucky if your Samuel can afford a clean sheet to cover his pauper body." Mary Kate remained silent. She had mastered the skill of retreating into the space behind her eyes, the last private refuge where their verbal abuse could not physically reach her. One evening, Aunt Donna summoned her inside, throwing a small, plastic-wrapped bundle onto the dusty wooden bed. "Here, your wedding dress. Don't expect gold for a worthless girl. Wear it and leave. Mary Kate slowly unwrapped the package. It was a synthetic, cheap, ill-fitting white dress, clearly salvaged from a clearance bin, stained conspicuously with what looked like old coffee near the hem. The sleeve was ripped at the seam. "It's not even clean," Mary Kate whispered, looking at the ragged garment in her hands. "Be grateful I gave you anything at all." Donna snapped, her voice spiking with malice. "You want me to bankrupt myself for a wedding I didn't plan? Go fix it yourself. And pray your crippled pauper husband doesn't fall off his crutches on the way to the altar." Mary Kate clutched the dress tightly and walked out into the cool air. "Is this all I am? A worthless pawn to be shuffled into shame and discarded?" But the internal turmoil was no longer just fear. It was dominated by a consuming, restless curiosity. Samuel's straight spine and gentle demeanor had planted a seed of profound doubt she could not ignore. She resolved to watch him, to find the truth he was hiding. Pista 1. The Book and the Scholar. The next morning, Mary Kate positioned herself behind the large, overgrown lilac bush near the broken church fountain. She saw Samuel sitting there. He was visibly relaxed and was deeply engrossed in a book. It was not a cheap, worn paperback. It was a thick, leather-bound volume, perhaps a philosophical classic or something technical. He turned the pages with the precise, reverent care of a scholar. Mary Kate paused, hidden in the shade. Why would a beggar, a traveling carpenter, be reading a book like that, with such obvious focus? Then an old, hurried woman from the far edge of the village approached Samuel, speaking quickly in a mix of frantic local dialect and worried, broken English. Samuel calmly set the book down, straightened his back, and responded to her. He didn't use the simple, coarse language of the village. He spoke fluent, polished English, his voice carrying a subtle, educated authority as he patiently explained a complex law regarding aid for the elderly. The old woman looked shocked, then overwhelmed with gratitude. Mary Kate felt a deep, unsettling shiver run through her. He speaks like a college professor, not a laborer. Pista 2, The Repair and the Engineer. Later that afternoon, she found him near the main square, where a local truck driver was struggling violently with the engine of his heavy pickup. The driver was covered in oil, cursing loudly and smashing tools. Samuel hobbled over, leaned heavily on his stick, and observed the engine for barely 30 seconds. He didn't use force or brute labor. He merely pointed to a tiny, corroded wire near the battery, whispering a technical instruction. The driver, desperate, followed the suggestion, turned the key, and the engine roared to powerful life instantly. The driver stared at Samuel, astonished at the effortless expertise. That was not the practical knowledge of a traveling carpenter. That was the precise knowledge of an engineer or a master mechanic. Mary Kate's fear had now fully morphed into a consuming, anxious need for confirmation. That night, she found Samuel sitting on their usual stone perch behind the shed. "You came," he said softly. "I couldn't sleep," she replied, standing over him, her voice tight with suppressed urgency. "I saw you today. The book. The English. The engine. Who are you, Samuel?" He paused, looking out at the dark, silent fields for a long moment. "I am the man who is marrying you tomorrow, Mary Kate." "That is not an answer," she insisted, her voice sharp with desperation. "You speak like someone educated, powerful. You don't limp all the time. You are not a beggar. Why are you pretending?" Samuel looked up at her, his eyes calm, yet penetrating. "Maybe I'm just very good at playing a part, Mary Kate. But what difference does it make? I'm still the only one who didn't laugh at you. I'm still the only one who offered you safety." "Are you punishing me?" she whispered, the question tearing at her heart. "No," he said quickly, his voice instantly firm and powerful. "I would never punish you. I chose you because you were gold, Mary Kate. They just didn't know how to value you." She finally sat beside him, reluctantly accepting the terrifying ambiguity. "What happens after the wedding?" "You'll come with me. You will be safe. You will never lack shelter." "That's still not an answer." Samuel stood up slowly, the movement practiced and smooth. "You are walking into something big, Mary Kate. You'll understand everything soon. The wedding, the final humiliation. The wedding morning arrived with a cold, oppressive silence. There was no music, no genuine celebration, only hushed, embarrassed voices and fake smiles. Mary-Kate stood in her room, staring at her reflection in the dusty, cracked mirror. The stained lace dress hung loosely on her shoulders. She looked like a sacrifice being prepared, not a bride. When she stepped into the small sitting room, the atmosphere was funereal. Frank, Donna, and the twins sat stiffly, their faces a mixture of boredom and spite. Samuel, wearing his slightly cleaner, dusty clothes and leaning heavily on his stick, stood near the small table holding the Bible. The local pastor rushed the ceremony, clearly desperate to finish the embarrassing transaction. "Do you, Samuel Hayes, take Mary-Kate Sullivan as your wife?" "I do," Samuel said, his voice calm and firm, cutting through the tension. "And you, Mary-Kate, do you take Samuel Hayes as your husband?" Mary-Kate looked at Samuel. His eyes, fixed on hers, were unwavering and kind. She looked at her uncle's hateful, pale face and her cousin's cruel, smirking expressions. She whispered the words that bound her fate, "I do. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may go." It was over. No kiss, no applause, no rice thrown. Just cold silence. "Let's go," Samuel said, offering no further explanation. Mary-Kate followed him out of the house. As they walked away from the compound, the only sound was the deliberate, painful drag of Samuel's foot across the dry earth, monitored by the staring eyes of the neighbors. She didn't cry. She felt utterly empty. They walked for only a short distance until they turned onto a small, unmarked path off the main road. "Are we not taking the bush path to your shack?" she asked, exhaustion coloring her tone. "No," Samuel replied, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. "We have a car." Mary-Kate stopped, frozen in disbelief. Then she saw it, a massive, gleaming black SUV, parked silently and discreetly beneath an old oak tree. The driver, a tall man in an immaculate, expensive suit, stepped out instantly and opened the passenger door. "Good afternoon, sir," the driver said, bowing slightly to Samuel. Mary-Kate's eyes widened, her jaw slackening. "Sir?" Samuel offered a gentle, calm hand and helped her into the luxurious, air-conditioned interior. "Sit, Mary-Kate. You're safe now." As the car pulled away, Mary-Kate sat rigid. The man beside her, the man she had just married, the one the whole village believed was a crippled beggar, had a private driver and a vehicle that screamed wealth and power. The silence inside was broken only by the quiet hum of the powerful engine. Her heart hammered against her ribs no longer with fear, but with the violent, terrifying rush of an overwhelming, imminent truth. She turned to him, the stained lace dress still a cruel weight on her shoulders, and whispered, "Samuel, please, tell me the truth. Who are you?" The black SUV moved smoothly along the winding country road, silent on the inside, yet deafening in the thunderous speed of Mary-Kate's thoughts. Her heart refused to slow down, her palms were slick with nervous sweat. She had just whispered "I do" to a man she didn't know, a man the entire village scorned as poor, yet here they were, seated in a pristine, air-conditioned vehicle with a chauffeur who called her husband sir. She could hold it no longer. She turned to him again, desperation now replacing exhaustion in her voice. "Samuel, please. This doesn't make any sense. The car. The driver. Even the way you are sitting now, you are not a beggar." He turned to her, calm as always, his expression unreadable. "What doesn't make sense, Mary-Kate?" "The truth. You've never been poor. Who are you?" Her voice was sharp, cutting through the quiet air. "Because I married a broken carpenter today, but the man I'm sitting beside is something else entirely." Samuel looked out the window for a fleeting second, then back at her. "My name is Samuel Hayes. That part is true. Everything else I had to hide." Mary-Kate blinked rapidly. "Hide? Why does that name sound familiar?" "Wait, Hayes. The Hayes Group? No, 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 no." He smiled softly, nodding once. "Yes. Samuel Hayes, CEO of Hayes Global Industries." Mary-Kate instantly covered her mouth with a trembling hand. The reality hit her with the force of a physical blow. The company that owns half the freight lines in the region? The real estate firm in the city? You're the one. Yes, Mary Kate. I am the one. She leaned back in the plush leather seat, her chest rising and falling quickly as she fought to breathe. But why? Why pretend to be a carpenter? Why the limp? Why the shame? Samuel leaned forward, folding his large hands, his eyes focusing with intense gravity. I wanted to know the truth about you, about your family, and about everyone around me. But first, let me explain the reason. Many years ago, my father, he built this company from nothing. He was strong, tough, and honest. Your stepfather, Frank Morrison, worked for us. He was a trusted middleman in a massive land deal we were brokering. Mary Kate's head snapped up, her eyes wide with mounting horror. Yes, Samuel continued, his jaw tightening. Frank was greedy. He forged signatures, double-sold the land, and pocketed millions. By the time my father discovered the deception, it was too late. The land was gone, the title was fake, and our family name was dragged through the mud. The shame and the stress killed him not long after. Mary Kate's mouth remained open. And my uncle never told anyone? Of course not, Samuel stated flatly. He kept quiet. Donna knew too. She helped him cover it up. They used that money to finance their comfortable life while my father died. Tears instantly filled Mary Kate's eyes. So you came for revenge? Samuel shook his head firmly. No, I came for the truth. I had rebuilt the company, but I lost faith in people. I went back to the villages, dressed like a beggar, limping, dirty, powerless. I wanted to see how people treated me when they thought I had nothing. Mary Kate lowered her head, the realization heavy and painful. You were the only one who treated me like a human being, Samuel said, his voice softening, yet filled with profound conviction. You didn't turn away. You didn't insult me. You didn't join your cousin's laughter. You gave me water. You greeted me with respect. I knew then you were different. But I had to be sure, he continued. So when Frank offered to sell you to me, to marry you off like trash, I agreed. I didn't buy you, Mary Kate, he stressed, placing a firm hand on her knee. I rescued you. I wanted to see what choice you would make, whether you would still say yes, even when you thought I was nothing. Mary Kate was silent for a long, heavy moment. So everything was a test? Yes. I was hoping for a reason to believe in someone again, and you gave me that reason. You know what hurts the most, she whispered, turning to him, her voice low and sharp with sudden clarity. You were the only person who saw me as a person. Even when I thought you were poor and broken, you treated me like I mattered. And now I find out you're powerful, yet you never told me the truth. I wanted you to see the real me, Samuel insisted. The person, before you saw the money. Mary Kate nodded slowly, staring out the window at the passing scenery. And now what? Where do we go? We go to our new home, he said. A place where you'll be safe, respected, and free. She looked down at her hands, which were shaking slightly. Will I ever go back to the village? If you want to, he replied. I do, she whispered, lifting her chin slightly. Why? Because they need to see, she said, her voice quiet but firm. They need to see what God did for me. An hour later, the SUV turned into a wide, immaculate private road. The gates ahead were tall, gleaming bronze, and cameras blinked discreetly on both sides. As the car approached, the gates opened slowly, revealing a sight that made Mary Kate gasp. This was not merely a house, it was a sprawling mansion, 3 stories tall, a testament to silent, staggering wealth. Fountains danced in the front driveway, exotic flowers lined every manicured corner, and staff members, dressed in crisp uniforms, were already standing outside, waiting. The car stopped. A man in an expensive suit opened Mary Kate's door. Welcome, sir. Madam, welcome. Mary Kate stepped out slowly, her stained, torn wedding lace hanging loosely on her shoulder. Her simple shoes were dusty. She looked completely out of place, like someone who had come to beg for food. Yet, the entire waiting staff bowed to her. Good afternoon, madam, they greeted her in unison. Samuel took her hand gently. Come, Mary Kate. She followed him into the house, across marble floors that reflected the golden light from crystal chandeliers. The staircase looked like it belonged in a palace. Every step she took confirmed that this was not a dream. This was her new life. Later that evening, after she had bathed and changed into fresh, soft clothes, Mary-Kate stood on a vast balcony overlooking the shimmering garden below. Samuel came to stand beside her. "So what now?" she asked, turning to him. "Now you live. You breathe. You heal," he said simply. "And Frank and Donna? My cousins." Samuel's joy tightened slightly. "What do you want to happen?" "I want them to know I'm not the failure they thought I was," she said. "But I don't want revenge. I want peace." He smiled gently. "Then you're already better than them." Mary-Kate looked down at the simple silver band on her finger. "Thank you for seeing me, Samuel. Thank you for being you." She looked out at the darkening sky as the first stars began to appear. "Tomorrow. Can we go back to the village?" "So soon?" He raised a brow. "Yes," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I want them to see the beggar and the bride." The next morning, the sun broke over the mountain tops bright and proud. It was the kind of morning that made the birds sing louder than usual, as if they were trying to share someone's magnificent good news. Mary-Kate stood by the mirror, gently brushing her auburn hair. The room she now called hers was immense, clean, and filled with soft gold curtains that danced with the slightest breeze. But her mind was miles away, still fixed on the small-town settlement, not with the pain of the past, but with a new, quiet purpose. She had forgiven them in her heart, but she hadn't forgotten the injustice. "Are you ready?" Samuel asked, walking into the room. Mary-Kate turned, tying the final knot of a simple, tailored blue dress. "Yes, I'm ready." "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you." As they walked down the grand, curving staircase to the car, one of the staff handed Samuel a brown folder. He opened it quickly, flipped through the pages, and then gave a short, satisfied nod. "What's that?" Mary-Kate asked as they entered the sleek SUV. "A surprise," he said, tucking it into his side. Mary-Kate raised a brow, a genuine smile touching her lips. "Another one?" Samuel chuckled. "This one is special. For later." "Oh, ritorno a sentimento." They drove toward the mountain town for almost an hour. The SUV was deliberately parked a few blocks away from the Morrison compound. When Mary-Kate and Samuel stepped out, the air immediately shifted. Word had already spread like wildfire. The beggar bride had married a man with a gigantic black car. Children stopped playing and pointed. Old women dropped their baskets and squinted. People whispered and stepped out of their shops. "Who is that?" someone asked. "Is that the Hayes boy?" "The truck magnate." Mary-Kate walked with quiet power, her head held high. Samuel walked beside her, tall, calm, and no longer limping. His stick was gone. They stopped directly in front of Frank and Donna's house. Aunt Donna was standing at the gate, holding a broom. She froze instantly. Becky and Carol ran out, dressed in their usual mocking finery, but stopped halfway when they saw the powerful man and the radiant woman. Frank Morrison slowly walked out onto the porch, his face pale and sick with fear. Mary-Kate didn't say anything. She just stood there peaceful, whole, and undeniably strong. Samuel turned to the driver and said, "Bring it." The driver opened the back of the SUV and brought out a small, heavy box. He carried it to Samuel and stepped back. Samuel held the box in both hands and walked toward Frank Morrison. The entire street was watching now. Samuel handed the box to him. "This is for the debt your family owes the Hayes family. The money you stole, with interest." Frank didn't take it. "What? What is this?" "I don't understand." "It's not money, Frank," Samuel said calmly. "It's the truth." Mary-Kate stepped forward. She looked her stepfather in the eye, her green gaze unblinking. "You called me cursed," she said, her voice quiet but piercing the silence. "You said I would marry a pauper. You told the world I was nothing." Nobody moved. "And yet," she continued, tears filling her eyes, "God still remembered me." "I didn't come here to insult you," she declared. "I came to show you that even when people try to bury a seed, it can still grow." Aunt Donna opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Becky and Carol looked away quickly, shame finally forcing their eyes down. Mary Kate turned to her cousins. You laughed at me. You called me names. You said I would beg to eat. But today, she said, reaching into her small purse, I came to give, not to take. She walked over and placed a small, thick envelope on the porch bench. For you and your daughters, Donna. Buy something nice. Aunt Donna's lips trembled, but she still couldn't speak. Mary Kate then faced the crowd that had gathered. I'm not better than anyone here. I'm just proof that your story doesn't end where other people leave you. She turned and walked back toward the SUV. Samuel followed quietly. Just before she stepped in, she turned around one final time. Thank you for kicking me out, Frank, she said to her stepfather. If you didn't, I would never have walked into my real life. The door closed, the car drove away, and the town remained frozen in stunned silence. The next morning, the sun broke over the mountain tops bright and proud. It was the kind of morning that made the birds sing louder than usual, as if they were trying to share someone's magnificent good news. Mary Kate stood by the mirror, gently brushing her auburn hair. The room she now called hers was immense, clean, and filled with soft gold curtains that danced with the slightest breeze. But her mind was miles away, still fixed on the small-town settlement, not with the pain of the past, but with a new, quiet purpose. She had forgiven them in her heart, but she hadn't forgotten the injustice. Are you ready? Samuel asked, walking into the room. Mary Kate turned, tying the final knot of a simple, tailored blue dress. Yes, I'm ready. You look beautiful, he said. Thank you. As they walked down the grand, curving staircase to the car, one of the staff handed Samuel a brown folder. He opened it quickly, flipped through the pages, and then gave a short, satisfied nod. What's that? Mary Kate asked as they entered the sleek SUV. A surprise, he said, tucking it into his side. Mary Kate raised a brow, a genuine smile touching her lips. Another one? Samuel chuckled. This one is special. For later. Oh, ritorno a sentimento. They drove toward the mountain town for almost an hour. The SUV was deliberately parked a few blocks away from the Morrison compound. When Mary Kate and Samuel stepped out, the air immediately shifted. Word had already spread like wildfire. The beggar bride had married a man with a gigantic black car. Children stopped playing and pointed. Old women dropped their baskets and squinted. People whispered and stepped out of their shops. Who is that? Someone asked. Is that the Hayes boy? The truck magnate. Mary Kate walked with quiet power, her head held high. Samuel walked beside her, tall, calm, and no longer limping. His stick was gone. They stopped directly in front of Frank and Donna's house. Aunt Donna was standing at the gate, holding a broom. She froze instantly. Becky and Carol ran out, dressed in their usual mocking finery, but stopped halfway when they saw the powerful man and the radiant woman. Frank Morrison slowly walked out onto the porch, his face pale and sick with fear. Mary Kate didn't say anything. She just stood there peaceful, whole, and undeniably strong. Samuel turned to the driver and said, "Bring it." The driver opened the back of the SUV and brought out a small, heavy box. He carried it to Samuel and stepped back. Samuel held the box in both hands and walked toward Frank Morrison. The entire street was watching now. Samuel handed the box to him. This is for the debt your family owes the Hayes family. The money you stole, with interest. Frank didn't take it. What? What is this? I don't understand. It's not money, Frank, Samuel said calmly. It's the truth. Mary Kate stepped forward. She looked her stepfather in the eye, her green gaze unblinking. You called me cursed, she said, her voice quiet but piercing the silence. You said I would marry a pauper. You told the world I was nothing. Nobody moved. And yet, she continued, tears filling her eyes, God still remembered me. I didn't come here to insult you, she declared. I came to show you that even when people try to bury a seed, it can still grow. Aunt Donna opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Becky and Carol looked away quickly, shame finally forcing their eyes down. Mary Kate turned to her cousins. You laughed at me. You called me names. You said I would beg to eat. But today, she said, Reaching into her small purse, I came to give, not to take. She walked over and placed a small, thick envelope on the porch bench. For you and your daughters, Donna. Buy something nice. Aunt Donna's lips trembled, but she still couldn't speak. Mary Kate then faced the crowd that had gathered. I'm not better than anyone here. I'm just proof that your story doesn't end where other people leave you. She turned and walked back toward the SUV. Samuel followed quietly. Just before she stepped in, she turned around one final time. Thank you for kicking me out, Frank, she said to her stepfather. If you didn't, I would never have walked into my real life. The door closed, the car drove away, and the town remained frozen in stunned silence. O perdeo io legato. In the car, Mary Kate sat back, breathing slowly, deeply. Samuel looked at her. You didn't have to give them anything, he noted. I know, she said softly. But I needed to. If I left them the way they are, empty and full of hate, then I would become like them. Samuel smiled. You're nothing like them. Thank you for taking me back there. You were the one who faced them, he replied. She turned to him, her voice low. You know what I felt when I saw their faces? Pity. He was quiet for a moment, then he reached for the brown folder he had placed beside him and handed it to her. What's this? She asked, opening it slowly. Property documents, he said. Land, shops, buildings. All in the town and the surrounding areas. Her eyes widened, reading the names. What? Why are you giving me these? They are yours, he said. All in your name, free and clear. I want you to have your own power, Mary Kate. Not just wear my name, but stand tall on your own foundation. Tears filled her eyes. Nobody has ever done anything like this for me. That's because nobody ever saw your true value, Samuel said. But I do. She closed the folder carefully and held it to her chest. Thank you, she whispered. Months passed, and the story of the beggar's bride spread across the region. Mary Kate's Foundation, quietly funded by Samuel, opened its first center back in the mountain towns area, a place dedicated to teaching poor young women and single mothers skills like sewing, baking, and business management. One afternoon, Mary Kate was invited to speak at the local town hall to a gathering of young girls, orphans, and those forgotten by society. She didn't wear expensive jewels. She wore a simple white gown and black flats. But her presence filled the room like a calm, warming fire. My name is Mary Kate, she began, her voice steady. And, just like you, I didn't have much. I was treated like a sack of beans. I ate leftovers. I slept on torn mats. The room was silent. But let me tell you what I didn't lose, she continued. I didn't lose my kindness. I didn't lose my heart. She looked around the room slowly. People will call you useless. They'll say you're too poor, too quiet, too weak. But listen to me carefully, you are not too anything. You are enough. The whole hall clapped, and several girls stood. Later that night, Samuel sat with her on the balcony of their mansion, both sipping tea. That speech was powerful, he said. I was just speaking from my heart, she replied. She looked at him. Sometimes I still wonder what would have happened if you never came to that town. He smiled. Then maybe you'd still be in that compound sweeping the floor and eating cold food. Maybe. He reached for her hand. But the truth is, I was always going to find you, Mary Kate. Why? Because good hearts always shine, he said, even if it takes time. She grew quiet, leaning her head on his shoulder. I want to go visit my parents, she whispered. Tomorrow, he replied. We will build a monument there. To honor the kindness that saved you. A few years later, Mary Kate's Foundation had opened multiple centers across the state. She spoke in universities and sat with business leaders. But every time someone asked her, what changed your life, she said the same thing. Kindness. That's it. That's the whole story. We want to hear your thoughts on Samuel's hidden test and Mary Kate's powerful act of forgiveness. Don't let this story be the end. If you want to see more true stories of triumph, motivation, and unbelievable twists, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.